Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Varun Pawar, and welcome back to my channel, which is Certified Business Analysis Professional. And before proceeding further, I just have a small request. I know you people are getting benefited by my videos, and I hope I'll continue with this. But the only motivation for me is your feedbacks, your comments, your liking, and your subscription. So please, please, please do subscribe, like, and share my videos. Now, back to the topic. So far, we have completed three of the activities in a requirement lifecycle management knowledge area, and those three activities were trace requirement, maintain requirement, prioritize requirement, and today we will discuss on assessment requirement changes. Now, so since I am from the IT background, I would probably take an example. So if you people heard about the RFC board or RFC, which is request for change, and if you people are working with some requirement management tool, which is like Zira, so there the people or the stakeholders who are working with the solution, any solution, and if they want a change, they have another need to be added or implemented or extended in a solution, what they generally do is they raise a request for a change. So request for a change is basically just a simplified form which is having some fields where you have to fill the exact requirement, the context of the requirement, or the business value or the business case. Now that business case and that form is now then submitted to the change control board. The change control board comprises of the stakeholders who is having their control over the solution from different departments. It could be said like either one of them is from the IT, one from the business, one from the super user, or some other like the operation or someone who's using the solution. So these people are there, comprise a board, and that board then discuss about that request, whether that request is valid or not. Based on that, they do discuss the other sort of parameters, constraints, assumptions, business value, business context, and all. And then they either take a decision whether to approve or deny that change. But it could be possible they alone cannot do the analysis or the assessment. For that, they might need the help of the business analyst. So then the business analyst comes into the picture and do the further assessment on that RFC. Either the requirement is so clear in a first go that the change control board either can say okay or not okay, though simply they can approve or deny. But in some requirements which need a further assessment and the analysis, there the business analyst do his work. So once the solution either once the change request is approved, the business analyst do the further assessment, and then after the assessment, if the requirement is considered as approved, the story is being added to the backlog and the prioritization happens there. And then continue the cycle. The repetition could happen whether there is any need, there is a change is required to the current requirement or not. That follow up. Now, the focus area for today is BA do the further assessment on the RFC, and after that the recommendation, business analyst can do the recommendation whether we can go ahead with that requirement or not, right? So that is how we will go further. Now the objectives, now I will once you read those points you would able to relate it with the previous slide. The purpose is to evaluate the implication of proposed changes to requirements and designs along with the associated risks. This task is performed as new needs or possible solutions are identified. These may or may not align to the change strategy or the solution scope. Assessment must be performed to determine whether a proposed change will increase the value of the solution, and if so, what action should be taken. When assessing changes, the business analysts consider if each proposed change aligned with the overall strategy or not. So when we are saying overall strategy, this means the tactical and the strategical objectives of the solution, if that request for change is aligning or not, affects value delivered to the business or the stakeholder group. The business analysts try to assess whether that change is affecting, and how that change is affecting, whether that's affecting positively or negatively, and what value the change will give to the business or the stakeholder groups, impacts the time or resources, how much time that requirement need to deliver, how many resources that would take to complete that task, and how much value will be driven from that change out of it. Then all, if there is any risk associated with that change, any opportunity or a constraint, that also been assessed, and the results of the assessment must support the decision making and change control approaches. Now, in via this diagram, we'll try to understand the inputs. So we have three inputs, including the guidelines and the tools also considered as an inputs. So let's talk about the first input, which is requirements. You should know, the business analyst should know about the requirements, the list of the requirement which is delivered, which is in pipeline, which is under development, so that he would able to assess if the current request for change is associated with any of the requirement which is already delivered or in pipeline. That's how he able to assess it better. Similar thing happens for the solution design. If solution design is being created, if new design requirement is coming, change for request, then how that is aligned. Now the actual proposed change, what is the actual proposed change that is required to see the impact as well. Now why we need the change strategy? Because the change strategy talks about the purpose, the direction, the context, the critical components related to the change. Then we have a domain knowledge. Domain knowledge, if you don't have a knowledge or you are not expertise in that domain, if suppose I'm IT, so if I am not expertise in IT, I cannot decide on anything, so I cannot do assessment properly. So in order to do the assessment properly, you should have a proper domain knowledge. Then we have a governance approach. In our last slides, where we have discussed about the change control board that comprises of stakeholders from different roles. So the governance approach, which is part of the BAPM, business analysis planning and monitoring knowledge area, which talks about the plan governance approach, that actually guides the change control process. So it provides the guidance regarding the change control process. Legal and regulatory information, legislative rules and regulation that need to be followed is provided by this input. Requirement architecture. Now, when we are saying requirement architecture, it talks about the how the requirements are related to another requirement, and the objective of the requirement architecture is to see the entirety of the requirements together as a whole, the solution as a whole, not like the individual requirements separately. So the combination, the collection of the requirements that is deriving the solution as a whole, that need to be looked upon. So requirement architecture tells that thing, and that would help in the assessment of any change request, how that is impacting the entire solution. Then we have the solution scope. It talks about the boundaries of the solution, right, within which limit you have to make a solution, you can do a changes and all. So it is considered there as well. Now, once we are done with our assessment, we come up, the business analyst come up with a recommendation to approve, modify, or deny the proposed requirement. And same thing happens for the solution. Recommendation to approve, modify, deny proposed design. Now, what are the elements? Well, first of all, we have the assessment formality. Uh, so BA will determine. So what is assessment formality? Like how deep dive you have to do the assessment, and that's do you need any documentation for that, or how rigorously you have to do that. So the assessment formality talks about that. and it depends upon the I would say the approach, whether you are following the predictive approach of your development life cycle or the adaptive approach. If that is predictive approach, right, so it may need that more formal assessment of the proposed change. So predictive approaches are basically the waterfall model that in starting itself we want to freeze everything, we want to know about everything so that we don't get unknown surprises later on during the development. So we do that more rigorously, more formal way. We do a lot of documentation, we do all the assessment in one go. So there it is required that all the things is readily available in first go before we kick off the project or we start the project. Then the adaptive approach says these are like the sprints or the releases in small, periods or intervals. And it is a less formal way of assessment of the proposed changes. This idea of continuous evaluation may reduce the need for formal impact assessment as well. So the adaptive approaches is a good idea if you don't know everything in upfront, like you don't know what is going to happen after 2 3 weeks or after a month or after an year. So what you do, you try with based on your rough order of magnitude about the idea how it will work, how it will not work, and if there is any need for a change. So need for a change or a change request for a change best fit with the adaptive approaches, because there it's a scope of modifying things as and when, or based on the go to market demand, or just in time resources or schedule or quality. All those sort of things is being considered. So the best approach, like adaptive approach, is best fit where we are considering the request for the change. Though in predictive approaches it is also considered, but that is before we start the project, because that is the waterfall model of the development. You want to know everything in upfront before the projects kick off. So it could happen like proposed changes may be withdrawn from the consideration before any formal approval is required. It could be based on the priority, change is not required. Stakeholders say, okay, we don't want to go with this change, or ABC reason. Could be a lot of reasons or happens in between. That's why I said like the prioritization, once it's done, like you said, this is high priority, you put it in a top of the backlog. After some time, the priority is like becomes low because the urgency becomes low. So those things happens, those parameters keeps changing on during the development. Now, for the assessment, we have to do the impact analysis. So what are the factors on which you do the impact analysis? So these are the benefits. So the business analysts generally do the cost benefit analysis of the request for the change. And after that, he takes out the benefits part. Then the cost, how much cost it would incur in developing that feature or implementing that solution part or request. The impact, so what are the impact of that change, which areas is being impacted in terms of value, in terms of benefits, in terms of cost. So all sort of things, the impact analysis is done for that. The schedule, how much time it will take um, to implement that feature. And the urgency, what is the criticality of that request for a change, whether that is high critical or very critical, very highly urgent, then that is prioritized before any other requirement is prioritized. And then final, the impact resolution. So depending on the planned approaches, whether we are going adaptive, predictive, or depends upon the various stakeholders that include the business analyst, may be authorized to approve, deny, or defer the proposed changes. All impacts and resolutions resulting from the change analysis are to be documented and communicated to all the stakeholders. How decisions and changes will be made and communicated across an initiative is determined by the task plan business analysis governance approach, right? Now, who are the stakeholders involved in this? Customer. Customer give a feedback that change will impact in any value to the stakeholder or not. The end users are the real users who will give a feedback on how the change is going to impact, right? The domain subject matter expert, it's an expert, so we need the help of the expert at every time in assessing the change as well. Operational support, so whether the operational support is required, they will tell us whether they would able to support the solution with this change request or not. The project manager review the requirement if any additional project is required to support that additional change or not. Regulator, changes are likely to be referenced by the regulator. Regulator is controlling or monitoring, so that we need to take care of. The sponsor accountable for the solution scope, and the sponsor do provide the insights for the change request, and sponsor could be one of the stakeholder part of the change control board. The tester is being consulted for the how the request for the change impact on the proposed solution. And then what are the techniques? Well, the business case, because when a request for a change is raised, at that time the stakeholder has to put up the business case. The business rule analysis to assess changes to business policies and business, and whatever keywords I have marked highlighted here, you can directly relate these keywords with the techniques. So this will easily help you to click instantly. If you know about these keywords, you can click instantly like which technique it's talking about. So business rule analysis to assess changes to business policies and business rules and develop revised guidance. Decision analysis to facilitate the change assessment process. Document analysis to analyze any existing documents that facilitate an understanding of the impact of the change. Estimation to determine the size of the change. Financial analysis to estimate the financial consequences of a proposed change. Interface analysis to help identify interfaces that can be affected by the change. Interviews to gain an understanding of the impact or its assets from a single or a small group of stakeholders. Item tracking to track any issues or conflict discovered or raised during the impact analysis. Risk analysis and management to determine the level of risk associated with the change. Workshop to gain an understanding of the impact or to resolve changes in a group setting. And that's it. And I hope you understand this request for a change and assessment, the fourth activity of this knowledge area, requirement lifecycle management. We'll continue with the last activity next week. And after that, we would be doing the another knowledge area, that is solution evaluation. That would be probably our last knowledge area. And after that, we would switch to the discussion on the techniques. But before that, as I said, I need your support. Please do like my videos and put some feedback or comment so that I can improve my sessions in future. So that's it from my end in today's session. We'll connect back with you in our next session. Till then, take care. Goodbye.